Today, it is our honor to have 4 outstanding faculty members. They all demonstrate a very unique innovations in their remote online teaching. And, so we have Professor Mayona Delaney, Professor Mata Jafari, Professor Steve Min, and Professor Start Lee. So without long overdue, what I'm going to do is we're just gonna get started. The first professor is Mayona. So Mayona, feel free to unmute your microphone and share screen, and Fanny, make sure she has a sharing screen right, and then we'll get the session started. Thank you.
I am a teacher in the Claire Trevor School of the Arts, where I teach music theater. The arts are always taught in person, right? So when we were told to move to Zoom, it became a real challenge to figure out how we were going to bring appropriate and top drawer education to our wonderful art students. So I am going to share my screen. I prepared a PowerPoint so I could explain to you how I became a Zoom teacher. Everybody loves musicals, and musical theater is what I do. So we had to figure out a way to make it work for our students. First thing I needed to do, though, was to encourage my students to learn to use iMovie. And to make that happen, I did an introduction video on iMovie to demonstrate that it can be done. Even I can do it. Here we go. And here's my video.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marana Delaney. I am head of musical theater here at UC Irvine. I will be your instructor for Drama 143C, the study of contemporary music theater in performance. We will be working on songs and scenes from Hair, Rent, Rock of Ages, Spring Awakening, and of course Hamilton. We will also be working on individual scenes from the contemporary musical theater canon from 1960 to present day. This quarter will be entirely remote learning, and we will work together to gain many tools that will be useful to you in your career ahead. I look forward to working with you and growing with each one of you. See you in the fall.
So I figured if I could do it, my students could do it. So we had to figure out the requirements, how to sing live, how to give professor feedback, how to give class affirmations, and also through Zoom, how to address the course outcomes for a singer-actor when the Zoom platform has all the problems that we know about internet lag. Accompaniments can't be sung with someone live because they don't sync at the same time, and all our actors are in different time zones or different spaces. So what we came up with was doing movies. So everyone had to learn how to do a movie. Here's one of my students.
My name is Violet Finn, and I will be singing I Just Want to Be a Star. When I became a nun at a very early age, I had to choose between the convent or a life upon the stage.
So as you can tell, this is great video. I don't have any way, though, of giving input. So what we did, Fanny and I went to Yuja and figured out how to make Yuja a platform that we could give moment to moment, beat by beat interaction. So here's an example of that work. And you'll note at the bottom, I start to give comments in the middle of her singing video that you just saw in the previous slide.
So when Reverend Mother said we're putting on a show, I must tell you, I was thrilled to death. I couldn't wait to go. Well then, to my surprise, Reverend Mother didn't see what's so obvious.
So you'll notice that I can give notes in the bottom right-hand corner. I noted to Violet that she's starting to lean into the camera and it doesn't work for her. So rather than just giving general comments, which you see on the right-hand side of the screen, oh, that was good, Violet, very good material for you, I can actually give comments in the middle.
Money and fame I don't desire. I only want to sparkle. I'm not here to start a fire, you see. I don't care if I'm ever rich or famous. I just want to be a star.
So these comments keep popping up and I can stop and start the video as I'm watching it on my own time so that the students can see what I see and take notes just like we would in class.
I don't care if you know what my name is. I just want to be a star. I want to be the nun who makes you cheer, the nun who's out in front instead of in the rear. For once I want to lead the band and have the crown in the palm of my hand. Oh, I don't care if I'm ever rich or famous, just so I can be a star.
So the wonderful thing about this use of Yuja is I can give specific comments. I can give comments that the student can then reflect on, and we can have interactive discussions with the student about my notes and their work by actually looking at the video together. This platform will be used in the future now. And it takes quite a bit of work in the setting up of the class because you have to have a student create a personal Yuja account. They have to give me access to comments. Then they upload their Yuja video. They share it on Canvas. I give my comments. We meet for a one-on-one discussion, and then we refilm. They refilm this for their final performance at the end of the quarter. I did want to share with you one more video, which is the second step in the course, where we turned those songs into scenes. They used Adobe that the university provided, and here's an example of the scene work.
Ladies and gentlemen, this contest will be straight shooting using clay targets, 20 shots apiece, with each contestant taking 5 at a time. The one with the fewest misses will declare the winner.
Let's get started. I got me a date in town in half an hour, which don't give me much time to beat her.
Beat me? Little Jake, hand me that sack of gold medals I won for being the best shot in the entire world.
Annie, you don't need to.
I bet all them medals up again a couple of those puny little tin badges you got.
You're on.
Annie, you can't bet away $100,000. That's all the bankroll we got.
What's the matter? Lesson in long distance spitting. Anything you can do, I can do better.
Ha!
I can do anything better than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Anything you can be greater. Sooner or later, I'm greater than you.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I can shoot a partridge with a single cartridge.
I can get a sparrow with the bow and arrow.
I can live on bread and cheese.
And only on that?
Yes.
So can a rat.
Anything you can sing, I can sing higher.
I can sing any note higher than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
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 How do you sing that high?
I'm a girl.
I'm going to take us to the end.
And
I can.
no, you can't. No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No,
Yes,
you
I can.
So not only did they learn to use Yuja, they also learned how to create video that they can use for their websites down the line when they become professionals. I believe the step 3 in this use of Yuja is its future applications. I think the hybrid model will continue with us in the arts, and that I will continue to use Yuja with singer-actors to build awareness, self-awareness. We'll continue to use them to detail evaluations and to give conversations with students. They will also use them for their professional pursuits when they do distant auditions. And perhaps most importantly, students can use these videos for self-reflection, to see if they're really making the strides that they think they are. I also believe that this tool can be used in medicine, law, and business for patient interaction, for training a lawyer, for opening arguments, and even for business when they're making sales pitches to clients. So, as you can tell, I love Yuja. I didn't believe I would ever say that when I was first working on it with Vanny. But it has turned into a very useful tool that I hope we will continue to use in music theater for the years ahead. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mayona, for your wonderful presentation. And I want to thank you for sharing your teaching excellence with us. So there are 3 takeaways I actually got it from your presentation. The first thing is that, you know, all the tools you've been using was actually from the existing tool that's available at UCI. So every faculty can actually have access to Canvas and Yuja and really make these kind of a commentary exercise possible. And the second thing is that, you know, it doesn't have to be a drama class or musical class. This could be a student presentation. It could be something that, you know, you wanted to come and you can kind of make the discussion as a video discussion for students to come into to a topic. So this can be widely used for a different kinds of discipline. And the third thing is that how cool it will be to having these kind of assets available, and student will include that in the e-portfolio for later. So thank you so much. Let's give Mayona a round of applause with her wonderful presentation. And let's kind of move on to our second presenter. Is Professor Mata Jafari, and she has years of experience teaching an online course with a large class to really help them to be mindful of the wellness. And she has her secret about how she deliver and interact with students synchronously and asynchronously. So let me stop sharing right now. And so if you could start, unmute your microphone, Mata, you're going to share us about your secret.
Thank you, Megan, for the introduction, and thank you to DTI for inviting me to present. So over the next 10 minutes, I'm just going to share with you my experience with Life 101, and I'm assuming that you can see my slides. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so really the main goal for this course is to help our students to improve their mental and physical health. And I have to make this disclaimer that before starting to teach this course and developing it in 2012, I really had no expertise in any of the topics that are listed in this course, because I am a professor of pharmaceutical sciences, and pretty much during my 25 years of academic career, I have always taught, you know, basic science courses from biochemistry to molecular pharmacology. But I developed the course in 2012 to address the stress epidemic and encourage our students to adopt healthier lifestyle choices. So the course was first offered in class and then online during the very first summer that I offered this course. And the enrollment has been anywhere from 400 to 600 students. And as of winter 2021, the course was offered to students on all 10 UC campuses. And I need to thank Megan for encouraging me to keep applying for the ILTI grant. And finally, the second time we got the grant and we were able to develop the course. And I collect data every quarter after I teach the course to see what kind of impact the course has had on our students. So I have a survey before and after the course. And something that has been consistent is the fact that our students tell me and tell us that not only this course changed their perception or knowledge, but they also actively change their behaviors over the course of the quarter. And I also have longitudinal data from students a year after they had taken the course, and some of these lifestyle changes stay with them. So what is the future for Life 101? I'm hoping to offer it on Coursera because I've had a number of emails and phone calls from teachers and professors in Orange County high schools and also Cal State universities, and they were asking me if UCI can offer this course to their students. So hopefully that will happen soon. So I want to just give a very brief overview of the content and the style of this course. So on the right, you see the course schedule. We have 10 modules. The modules are based on evidence-based information, based on the latest scientific data. When I teach the course in class, of course, I try to have discussions with students, so it's interactive, based on active learning, and it's very practical. Students really, my goal is for students to practice what they learn. And each module has 3 to 4 short videos with embedded reflections and questions. So yes, yay to UJA, and thank you for everybody at DTI who taught me how to use UJA. The module has a quiz, which is an online quiz at the end of each module, and it has discussion forums that I'm going to share with you. The course is updated every year based on students' feedback. So that creates a challenge when you record the videos for the online course, an online course that is asynchronous. But I'm going to share with you in the next slide how I have addressed this challenge. And the challenge, the way I address it is by providing workshops and office hours that are really based on students' feedback. And the students' feedback are not just based on the surveys or course evaluation, but they are real time. They are based on what students could write in the discussions and emails that they send to me. And then I have weekly announcements. So I'm going to start with the weekly announcement. This is an example of a weekly announcement. I put after the module on bad drugs on college campuses, and students were talking to each other about, the benefits of alcohol or, alcohol consumption. So I posted the PDF file of this study that pretty much said that there is no good dose for alcohol. And after posting this, I had many emails from students that they really had no idea about the harmful effects of alcohol, even at low doses. During the pandemic, I have offered workshops on improving emotional health. So this is a workshop that was presented in winter 2021, and I presented it again actually last Thursday during spring quarter. From the discussion post after the stress module, I recognized last quarter that students are really struggling with their college, with their graduate school applications, getting letters of recommendation. So I presented a workshop on that, and I recorded the workshop, and the workshop is now a link that students can use. So this is the landing page of the course. So students, when they log in, this is what they see. And with the start here takes them to this page, and the syllabus is posted on this page. All the course requirements are posted on this page. And then when they click on these numbers, they get to the module. So for instance, module 2 is etiology, physiology, symptoms, and health outcomes of stress. So they watched 3 videos, 3 short videos, and each video is embedded with questions and reflections. And for the reflections, they have to pause for a minute and think about a question that I'm asking them. And they can't move forward. They have to really watch the whole thing. They can't just fast forward the videos. Probably one of the features that make the course interesting are the discussion posts. So right now I had to cap the course this quarter, so I only have 470 students. And these are some examples of the discussions actually from this quarter. Students are supposed to write discussions that are only 50 words, but they write more. And replying to each other's discussions is optional, but many students, I would say more than half of them, comment on each other's discussion. So this is one discussion, this is another one, and students give each other tips and try to help each other to on their journey to wellness. And as I said, sometimes they reply to each other. So these discussion posts have created a community for students to talk to each other, share best practices with each other, and really help with each other. And most importantly, this is what our students say about this course. So these are, I just grabbed them from teaching evaluations from last winter, that the course is really changing. One student said the course changed my life. And after reading this evaluation, I decided to take the course myself. Because I want to change my life for the better. And something that is consistent in the evaluations is the students comment that this course should be mandated for all students at UCI. And I really don't know how to make it mandatory for all students. And students repeatedly said that they like the office hours and workshops, and also the announcements, because almost on a weekly basis, I put 1 to 2 announcements, either announcing a workshop that I'm presenting, and the workshop is not asynchronous, it's synchronous, but I record it and make sure to make it available to students who were not able to participate. I have also noticed that for the students who can't attend office hours or don't want to attend office hours, they prefer to have one-on-one meetings. So I've been trying to accommodate those students, but I'm sure you imagine in a class of 600, sometimes it's very difficult. And lastly, I'd like to thank my colleagues who really helped me to put together the new version of the course, practically using all the technology that we have available at UCI. I'd like to thank Bo for really helping me to enhance the online experience for the students, Natalie for videotaping all the lectures again in winter 2020, and really not working with me and being patient, because I also wanted to have wide angle student shots, and also Daphne for helping to develop the experience. And I think we are going to have the questions at the end. So once again, I'd like to thank DTI for inviting me to present this talk, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you so much, Mata, for your presentation. And let's give her a round of applause to really give us such a wonderful course. As you can tell, this kind of course is playing a vital part to really helping our student coping the pandemic stress. And right now this course is offered to all the UC campuses, so you can see the impact of how to help our student to keep out the cognitive wellness while supporting their study. One thing I really love her class is that she demonstrates a lot of the instructor's presence throughout the class. So she really interact with the students throughout these wonderful discussions, and the student will start to build that learning community. At the same time, I thought the checking questions that she inserted in the videos really play a good role in terms of helping them to reflect on their own learning. So thank you, Mata, for the wonderful presentation. So let's kind of move on to our next presenter. Our next presenter is Professor Steve Ming, and he is from the chemistry department, and he is going to demonstrate how he innovatively converting a lab course for the remote teaching environment. So let's give him a round of applause. And Steve, feel free to unmute your microphone and start your presentation.
All right, so thank you, Megan. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. So like Megan said, my name is Steve Mang. I'm an assistant professor of teaching in the chemistry department. And when the pandemic began, I was scheduled to teach a laboratory class, which did not happen because we couldn't really effectively deliver the lab. So we pushed it off. And during the summer and then in the fall, I got a chance to figure out with a couple of TAs how to replace the laboratory component of the class with something that could at least approximate the same thing. And so humanities people, don't tune out. Non-lab instructors, don't tune out, because the technology I'm going to describe could be used in a lot of ways to make things like case studies or even readings more interactive for students. So my application is labs, but in general, this is a thing that is an interactive content delivery mechanism for students. So I want to do the acknowledgements first in case I run out of time. Dr. Marie Van Stavern is a former UCI graduate student who now teaches in Maryland, but she's the one who introduced me to this software that I'm going to talk about, and gave me the idea that, hey, maybe it could be used to replace in-person labs. Dr. Renee Link in the chemistry department is also using this software for her large organic chemistry classes. Nick and Maddie are the two TAs that initially helped me out with developing these virtual exercises. And then I have to thank Fanny for her help with just the Canvas design over last summer. She made the whole course easier and better to deal with. So thank you, Fanny. All right. These labs that I designed to replace in-person experiments, these are for an upper division instrumental chemistry class. And so the way that I decided to structure them is as a choose your own adventure game. So if you're of a certain age and a certain degree of nerdiness, you may remember a couple of things, which are the choose your own adventure books, and also text-based computer games, like on a 5 1/4 inch floppy disk. And the way that these labs are structured combines those two things. So the goals of these labs, of replacing the in-person labs, were, first of all, I wanted to make something that's more interactive than watching a video. When I taught general chemistry lab, that's what we did. We filmed the TAs doing the experiment, the students watched it and then wrote it. And when you have several hundred students, that's probably the most reasonable thing to try, but I wanted to see if I could make the students interact with the material more and understand better how the data were collected and what sort of instruments were used, what sort of instrument settings were used, so that they would have a more sophisticated understanding than is required by general chemistry students. I wanted to replicate the decision-making and student-to-student discussion that happens during a lab. So typically when I'm in the lab, students, a lot of the lab, they'll be on autopilot, they'll know how to do everything. And then they'll reach a point where they need to make a big decision, what settings to use on an instrument or what concentration of a solution to make. And then they talk about it and maybe they'll call a TA over and they're learning something at that point. And so I wanted to replicate that learning as much as I possibly could. And then finally, I wanted to keep them engaged and interested in the labs, again, more so than they would if they were just watching a half-hour-long video. And then keep them meeting the course learning objectives. So understanding how instruments work and how to use them to accomplish a specific task, how to develop a method for solving a given problem. And watching a video does not engage their brain in that way. So I needed something more interactive. So this technology, this website, or really it's a programming language that I'm talking about, is called Twine. And so this is an open source tool. So there's a lot of documentation and support on it for creating web pages and that tell interactive stories. So this is the text-based adventure game part of it. These interactive stories are designed to be non-linear and let users choose their own path. So this is where the choose your own adventure game comes in. And typically, like if you go online and look at the examples, these are people making, Dungeons and Dragons type adventure stories. There is not a lot of chemistry content on there, but we have created a bunch. And the choose your own adventure part corresponds to the multiple paths that students might take through an experiment. These HTML pages that you produce with this software can be embedded directly into Canvas, and I'll show you how that works in a minute, so that we don't have to host it on an external site. We don't have worries about students in other countries not being able to access it. All right. And then since you can embed links in the HTML page, we can give students their data using Google Sheets, and we can make sure that only UCI students have access to it, or that students only get the data that corresponds to their decisions, this kind of thing. So the Twine programming environment is a very visual environment on one level. It's organized into these boxes that you see here, which are called passages, and then each passage has an entry point and an exit point that the students can take. So for example, this one here, the students they just read something in a box here, and then there's only one way to get to difference amplifier 2. But then they need to make a decision, and that decision can take them down one of 3 paths. They're allowed to realize I made the wrong decision and go back. And then whichever one of those 3 decisions they make, we give them a data set, and then they go and they watch a video, and the video is the same for everybody. The code has elements that are really easy to work with. So for example, you can just type in text and it'll show up in the HTML page. You can also put in this case, this is an iframe holding a YouTube video. So this is just, you go to YouTube, you copy the embed code and you paste it in here. And then you can use logic as well. So we set a variable that's based on the decisions students made about what kind of amplifier they wanted to build. And then if they choose this one, they get this video. If they choose this one, they get this video, etc. So if you are familiar with programming, there's a lot you can do with Twine, but you need absolutely no programming experience to get started with it and to create an actual story. There are also on the webpage, on Twine's webpage, there's an extensive wiki and tutorials and videos and everything. Since it's open source, a lot of people contribute to this. So what it looks like for students, you can have pages that are entirely text with links that they choose. You can have pages with videos embedded in them and with text. And then you can have pages that branch them out. So click here to go back, click here to go back to a different place, click here to continue. We can also give students, as I mentioned, their experimental data. So the link here will be different depending on the student's choices. And so we set up Google Drive folders and we make a bunch of data sets. I tried to really replicate the in-lab experience so students can go way down a wrong path and get data that is just terrible. And that's not necessary though, right? So when we go back to in-person learning, I'm still planning to use these for pre-lab experiments, or pre-lab rather, like exercises. And so in that case, it'll be much more linear, maybe only 1 or 2 paths. And so in that case, you could simulate 2 data sets or collect 2 data sets and give them to the students. It doesn't have to be, this folder has 40 different options in it. It doesn't have to be that complicated. So let's see how it looks in Canvas. I have one that's already going. So here, this is how it looks in Canvas. Actually, and I'm going to put a link to these slides in the chat. And these are public slides, and the Canvas page is public as well. So if anybody wants to come and try this thing, try it. But so the students, they'll watch a video and they'll say, okay, we'll click here to build our first circuit. They'll get a circuit diagram. Here's the circuit that you're going to build. They can choose the parameters that they want to use to build that circuit and say, okay, and then they'll get a video of that circuit being constructed. They'll choose voltages to test it with, and then they'll say, okay, here's my data. And if they click here, they'll go to a Google Sheet. and then they continue. Now this page is called the sanity check, right? So they need to analyze that data before they continue and see if it's any good or not, just like they would in the regular lab. We have a 7-hour lab period in Chem 152, and you could finish in 2 hours, but you might go home and analyze your data and it's all garbage. Well, same deal here. This twine will take about an hour to click through. You could do it in 5 minutes and get data, but some of it might be garbage. So it was important to me to replicate that part of the lab experience that they need to check as they go. And so, et cetera. Okay, so then, data collection using Google Sheets, so we can get information about the choices that the students make as they move through as well. So this is an example of what we get. So we get the time and the date that we do it. We get the students' names, which I removed. And then we get information about which choices they made as they move through. So we can ask them to do a calculation and enter their answer, and then we can grade that or not. I don't grade them right now, but when I switch to using them for pre-labs, I probably will. They get a bunch of, anyway, we can get a bunch of data. So I'm out of time, I think, but the student response has been pretty positive. So these are survey questions from winter 21. Basically, blue is good and orange is bad. And so we just asked these Likert scale questions about, did the twine help you understand procedures? Did it help you prepare for an in-person experiment? Did it help with having your group in your Zoom breakout room talk to each other? And for the most part, they said yes. So I'm very positive on this. I'm going to keep using it as we transition back to in-person even. Somebody in the chat said it must have taken an amazing amount of work to set this up. The first one, yes, but I have 7 experiments that I do on twine. And at this point, I can make one of these in a day, including simulating all the data, making videos, etc. So there is a learning curve, but once you get past that steep part of the learning curve, these actually don't take all that much effort to set up.
Well, let's give Steve a round of applause about this wonderful presentation that he shares with us. Every time when we think about teaching STEM classes with lab components, you think about, well, we probably can only deal with this kind of learning in the laboratory environment. And Steve just demonstrating his innovations about how do you be able to deliver such learning in a remote setting. Really a well done examples. And I hope you all kind of get a little inspiration about how you can implement that kind of instructional strategies into your own teaching. So thank you so much, Steve. Our next presenter, so let me kind of share my screen again. So our next presenter is Professor Star Lee. Something that I am very appreciative of what she's about to share is that, as you know, inclusive teaching becomes a very important part of our everyday life. How do we integrate inclusive teaching in our everyday academic practice, especially crucial. So Professor Star Lee is gonna share with us her innovation, how she integrates this concept into into her curriculum and also the learning activities. So thank you so much. And Star, feel free to unmute your microphone and start your presentation, and let's give her a round of applause.
So as Megan mentioned, I'm going to talk about a class that I teach. It's an upper division developmental cell biology lab course. And my topic is going to be very different from what Steve just presented on. I want to say that I developed this course really in response to last year and the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And this class really revolves around the idea of skin pigmentation. What is skin pigmentation? How do we get it? I think this topic is obviously still very relevant from this past year, where we saw the rise of anti-Asian attacks. And we still see the murders of Black and Brown people with Dante Wright and Adam Toledo this year. And so I kind of just want to start off also, like, this is not my topic of expertise in any way, but I really want to create a class where students could really connect with what's going on in their society today. And I want to also mention, I had so much help from Kaylee from the DTEI when I was part of the DLI this past summer. So she created this lovely banner and helped me with the Canvas site. So in addition to the science, I have some goals that go beyond what I want them to take away from the content and the lab skills. So by the end of this course, I want students to be able to be proud of their skin color, first and foremost. I also want them to really think about how their skin pigmentation is related to them personally, as well as be aware and critique social inequities related to skin pigmentation. So the first couple of weeks, we spend some time thinking about learning about how skin pigmentation may have evolved in people, as we used to live in areas where the UV rays from the sun were really strong, and as we migrated to regions where the UV rays weren't as strong. And so how did our skin pigmentation adapt to these new environments? We also talk about the fact that our skin pigmentation serves a purpose. So melanin is the skin pigment, and it protects our cells from DNA damage against the sun. And so the darker you are, the more eumelanin you produce, and the more protective it is against this DNA damage that can occur. So it's something very positive to have this amount of eumelanin. And they want the students to feel that kind of sense of proudness, like this is serving a purpose in my skin. Another thing I try to do is get them to connect personally with the material. And this is work based on Dr. Canning and Herkowitz, where they study the utility value assignments. And what that means is they ask students to connect with the content to their everyday life. And what they've seen in response to that is that will lead to more student motivation, better performance, as well as persistence in STEM. So I kind of wanted to also create that kind of environment in my classroom. And so the first week they're asked to do a reflection, and this is quite uncommon in science courses, but much more common in the humanities and social sciences, I would say. But the first week I asked them to basically discuss how the topic of skin pigmentation is relevant to their own life. Be sure to explain why this information is relevant to your life and explain how the information applies to you personally by providing examples. And as you can see, this is based, the grading is just based simply on completion. So this is a very stress-free kind of assignment for the students, and they're free to write whatever they want. I want to share some examples of what students write about. These are just some excerpts. They might talk about, for example, in this first example, they talk about how skin pigmentation is different even among their family members. Some students might go on to talk about the colorism that they feel within their family as well. Another student talks about the time they've experienced racism and how that occurred when she was a young child and what that was like. And so these can be deeply personal. And the students know that no one else is reading them other than just the instructors. And so they have this freedom to be able to share these kinds of experiences. Other students talk about it in relation to what's going on in society. So you can see here, the first example connects it to the Black Lives Matter movement. And then the second one, this is pulled from winter quarter when the Capitol attacks had just happened. And so this student is talking about how the response that the police showed were based on the color or the skin pigmentation of the people who attacked the Capitol. And so it gives them this opportunity to talk about societal issues. And I should say, I try to encourage students to also relate what we're talking about to society and kind of move beyond just a biological perspective. And one way I try to do that is by sharing this TED Talk that Kaylee actually found and identified this artist because she thought it would be relevant to my course. And Angelique Dans is this artist who who takes pictures of people, and she shows that our skin color is a gradient of all different skin pigmentations. And I have the students watch her TED Talk and also write another reflection on it. This time, I specifically guide them to talk about how skin pigmentation is related to their identity or race or ethnicity, or how society perceives them. They also have the option to talk about someone else. If they don't want to talk about themselves as the example, they can talk about someone else. And I do this because I want them to really connect what we're talking about with the greater society, right? And for some students, this is a redundant question because they've already talked about racism and discrimination in their first week reflection. But for a lot of students, they don't talk about that. And so this really kind of directs them to talk about how our society treats people of skin pigmentation differently. I wanted to share this one excerpt from this week 4 reflection that a student had. And the student writes, even though we are all humans with the same number and color of bones, the melanin production an individual possesses can either place them at an advantage or disadvantage in society, as those whose melanocytes produce more pheomelanin are considered racially superior to those whose melanocytes produce more eumelanin. Because of the racial disparities which result from the perception that white is good and black is evil, people of darker skin pigmentation are always on the negative receiving end of the basic human rights in society. And I highlight this because this person did a great job of integrating concepts that we've just learned about related to the biology of skin pigmentation, and has been able to integrate it with their thoughts on how society treats people of different pigmentation. I think that lends power to their argument that it's simply a difference in just how much pheomelanin versus eumelanin our skin is producing that has these greater ramifications in our society. One of the reasons why I'm asking students to make these connections to society is really based on Paulo Freire's work on critical consciousness, where he advocated for marginalized people to really learn about and analyze their social conditions so that they are empowered to act to change social inequities that they face, social injustices that they face. And this also builds on the work of Dr. Watts and Dr. Deemer, who identify the reflection piece to be a critical component of critical consciousness and kind of lays the groundwork for action. And so I try to really emphasize not only being aware of these, but also like talking about how these inequities occur. And so we spent some time at the last week. So early on, a big bulk of the second half of the class focuses on melanomas and who gets melanomas and who doesn't. And one thing is that people of color are less likely to get melanoma, but they are more likely to die of melanoma. And one of the things that research indicates is because people of color are diagnosed at later stages of melanoma. And so I have the students think about why are people of color diagnosed at later stages. And we have a discussion in week 10 about all the different types of barriers people of color face when it comes to receiving equitable healthcare. And so this is a reflection that they write at the end of the quarter. Lastly, I wanted to share some comments about the reflection essays themselves from students. So at the end of the quarter, I just simply asked them, what did you think about these reflection essays? And so I wanted to share that writing the reflection essays made the class feel more personal. It makes it feel more important and easier to learn the material. So this kind of gets back at Dr. Canning and Herakowitz's idea that this increases student motivation when they're able to make these types of personal connections. They also connected to society, and students say that this allowed us to understand the weight that science carries in our society. I think that's greatly important as students try to integrate what we are learning in science and how it applies to our society. Other students are unaware and say, I wasn't aware about some of the specifics about the socioeconomic effects and bias and et cetera in healthcare. And so it really kind of opens their eyes to these experiences that other people may face. And lastly, this is something that comes up a lot, is it allows everyone to speak freely, and I was able to provide personal opinions and perspectives, something I don't get to do often in my biology courses. And I kind of just want to end my talk with that kind of emphasis that giving them these reflection assignments has provided them a space to be able to share their opinions and perspectives about something that they do want to share, right? And so it empowers them to speak up and gives them practice about talking about these kinds of issues.
Well, thank you so much, Star, for giving us such a wonderful presentation. And let's give her a round of applause about this great examples. What was really intriguing about her innovation is that she successfully integrated 2 different kinds of learning into one course. So a lot of the STEM faculty always wonder, how do I discussion boards not for me. STEM course is about problem solving, but a lot of the time, you can take advantage of these kind of really hot topics into a STEM teaching and allow students to express their opinion in writing, in discussion, to connect and make them feel more ownership of the topic. In that way, they are really more motivated to learn more about the subject matters. And what START has done an excellent work is really trying to also remedy students' anxiety about today's society into a biology course. So that was a really creative way that she delivered and support students, especially during this challenging time. So at the end, I really want to thank for all our presenters. They all demonstrate a variety of innovations and teaching in different kinds of discipline. And that's just kind of give them a round of applause again about what they have demonstrated. At the end, I want to kind of open out the Q&A session. So let me allow you to unmute your microphone. So anyone in the audience, if you have any questions to any of our presenters today, feel free to unmute your microphone and ask your questions, or you can also post your question in the chat and we will facilitate in that area. Does anybody has any question for our presenters? And I don't know, Fanny, if there's any previous question that already asked in the chat that need to be answered.
Yes. Mara asked Steve, say, it must have taken an amazing amount of the work to set this up, like the twine. So Steve, do you want to talk about how long you developed the twine?
Learning the language and getting the first one together, it maybe took a better part of a week to get it together, between testing it and doing some of the code wrong and things like that. But now that I understand how it works better and I'm used to converting a lab manual to a twine story, I can do it in about a day, 1 day per experiment. So not bad.
It's always taking a little bit longer to set out the first time. And once you get a pattern, it should not be too hard. But thank you so much, Steve. Anybody else has any other questions?
I do.
Hi, Laura.
Hello. I am just adjunct faculty. I'm not a recognized professor, but I work for the School of Education, and I work with student teachers in the field in high school and middle school sciences and math. They are facing many of the same questions that the professors are facing as they return to full-on in-person, hopefully in the fall. And that is, how do they take all these wonderful tools that they have learned to use and keep them alive in the classroom while the kids are personally talking to each other and utilizing specifically labs, much as Steve has pointed out. Computer science is moving into the high school at high speed. So programming such as he had mentioned would be awesome in teaching them how to learn to use those tools. So I'm hoping that through you guys, I can pick up some tips that I can share with them as they face these struggles. I have an extremely talented group of 9 teachers I'm working with this year. They have supported their mentor teachers who really were struggling with what to do in the past spring and then still in the fall when we opened up this year. So thank you very much for these opportunities. And I'm wondering if the faculty would mind if from time to time I contacted them with questions that might support my student teachers.
Yeah, I see a lot of knocking hand and thumbs up. So Laura, feel free to contact any of our presenters. They will be very happy to brainstorm with you some teaching strategies. In the meantime, I do have to I really appreciate your sharing. During the pandemic, I think one of the very few positives is that it really transformed how higher education deliver their teaching or their courses. And now we have a wonderful base foundation that we built in the past year to be able to build on that success. So, DTI is under the mission to really facilitate our faculty to rethink how we can repurpose the work we have done to really continue connect with our student. No matter, we will be able to utilize those material in a hybrid high flex setting, or how can we flip the teaching methodology to allow students to really digest those kind of fundamental knowledge and be able to repurpose our classroom time for more digital active learning kind of activities. I think there's a lot of potential we can explore together, and I'm really looking forward to more faculty sharing with their innovations next year. So right now I see it's 12:02. I really appreciate you guys coming to today's session, and I look forward to seeing you again in tomorrow's session. We're going to talk about how to prepare and plan for remote online teaching. So we look forward to seeing you again. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.